Please tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I would love to interact with you legends. Now to the story. There's something about coffee shops that makes people act like everything is fine. Maybe it's the smell of roasted beans or that soft background noise of cups clinking, and people pretending they aren't judging each other. I walked in and picked a table next to the window where I could see a street lined with little stores selling stuff like candles and earrings for $20, even though they looked like they were made during a bored weekend. The place had those chairs that never match, like they came from random garage sales. I didn't expect anything special from this meetup. I just thought it would be another average day with someone I would forget about in a week. Jake walked in like he had done this a million times. He had that kind of confidence people only have when they think for the main character. His hair was styled in that way that looks messy, but you can tell it took effort. His hoodie looked like the type people buy after scrolling for hours online just to look casual. He sat down like the chair was waiting for him and gave me that look people give when they already planned how this will go. At first, everything felt normal. We talked about dumb stuff like how people pretend to like bitter coffee just to sound deep. He laughed too loud at small jokes like he wanted everyone around to hear he was having fun. The first 20 minutes were fine. It wasn't exciting, but it wasn't uncomfortable either. He talked a lot about how he hates boring people, but then only talked about basic topics like music playlists and how small towns make people weird. I started noticing how he kept checking his phone. Not in a nervous way, but like he was waiting for something to happen. I thought maybe he was just used to multitasking or whatever. Then he started taking random photos of the table, the cups, even his shoes. He didn't ask if that was okay. He just angled his phone like he was capturing some aesthetic moment for people online. He suddenly leaned back like he had been waiting to drop some big reveal. He mentioned something about how dates are more interesting when there's an audience. At first, I thought he meant like friends teasing him later. But then he pulled out his phone and opened a social media account I had never heard of. It wasn't a normal one. It looked like a knockoff version meant for people who love drama. He scrolled through a feed full of pictures of different people sitting across from him in different places like restaurants, parks, movie theaters. All of them looked like they had no idea they were being posted. He said he uploads every day he goes on so his ex can see that he's moved on. He zoomed in on one photo where the person looked mid-sentence and unaware. He didn't even try to hide that he found it entertaining. He told me he doesn't even care about the people he meets. He just wants his ex to feel like she messed up by leaving him. He said it like it was totally normal, like everyone does that. That's when everything in my head shifted. The coffee shop suddenly felt too small, like the air got heavy. I looked around to see if anyone noticed us, but everyone was too busy pretending to enjoy their overpriced drinks. I felt this weird mix of being watched and being stuck. I didn't want to cause a scene. I just sat there nodding like I was listening, but my mind was racing. I kept thinking about how many other people probably sat where I was sitting, thinking they were on a normal date while he turned them into content for someone else's entertainment. He kept scrolling through his secret account, showing me more profiles of people he had gone out with. Each one had a caption like a review. He rated them on how jealous he thought his ex would be. He said the best reactions were when his ex would message him asking who that person was. He said that made him feel like he still had control. The way he talked about control made the whole situation feel darker than just a weird hobby. It felt like everything he did was some twisted game. I barely touched my drink after that. I watched him take another picture of his hand holding his cup. I wondered if I had already been posted without even noticing. I checked my reflection in the window and tried to figure out what I looked like to him. Just another face to use. He didn't ask me a single real question about myself after that reveal. He just kept talking about how people are too sensitive and how posting someone without asking isn't a big deal. He said it like he expected me to agree, like it was some inside joke we were both part of now. I wanted to leave, but I didn't want to give him a reaction. I thought if I stayed calm, it would bother him more. So I sat there until he got bored of showing off and finally looked up from his phone. He looked at me like he was waiting for approval. I just told him I had to go. He didn't look upset. He looked satisfied, like my exit was exactly what he wanted to upload next. On my way out, I checked behind me, half expecting him to take a picture of me walking away. Maybe he did. I'll never know. Walking outside felt like stepping out in a trap. The street looked the same, with people carrying shopping bags and taking pictures of their food through restaurant windows. Everything looked normal, but it didn't feel the same anymore. I kept seeing his face in my head, smiling while scrolling through strangers like they were collectibles. I didn't block him right away. I wanted to see if he would post something. Part of me wanted proof. Later that night, I searched for that account name he showed me. I found it. Scrolling through it felt like going through a gallery of people who had no clue they were part of someone else's revenge plan. I saw a photo of our table, just the cups and the window in the background. The caption said something like, "Another one. She'll love this." No mention of me, but I knew it was about me. It didn't matter that my face wasn't there. He still used me to keep his messed up cycle going. I closed the app and just sat there. No dramatic ending. No lesson learned. Just this weird, empty feeling like I had just been a background character in someone else's show. I didn't even plan on going out that day. It was one of those afternoons where the weather couldn't decide if it wanted to rain or just stayed gloomy for no reason. I was sitting on my bed scrolling through random stuff, not really focused on anything. That's when I got the message confirming the plan with Emily. I almost ignored it, but staying in felt worse than the idea of going out, so I just threw on a jacket, grabbed my phone, and left. The place we agreed on wasn't fancy. It was one of those restaurants that tries to look old on purpose with brick walls and metal signs hanging everywhere like it's trying to force a certain vibe. On the way there, I kept thinking maybe this would be just another average meetup. Nothing too special, but at least something to do. The street outside the restaurant had cars slowly moving past like even they were bored. People sat outside at little tables pretending they were having some deep moment with their drinks. I walked in, and the air smelled like grilled food and something sweet I couldn't figure out. The lights were dim, but not in a cool way, more like they were trying too hard. I found the table and sat down, scrolling through my phone while waiting. Emily walked in with this confident walk like she already knew how everything would go. She wasn't nervous at all. She sat down and didn't even look around like most people do when they get somewhere new. She just settled in like she had been there before. There wasn't much small talk at first, just a quick hello, and then silence while she looked through the menu. I hadn't even picked it up yet when she suddenly waved the server over without even asking me. It caught me off guard because she didn't ask what I wanted or even look at me to check if I was cool with it. She ordered for both of us like she rehearsed it earlier. She said something about choosing something she thinks fits me better than I could choose for myself. I just sat there watching her talk to the server like she had full authority over the situation. When the server walked away, she leaned back and looked proud of herself. I was still processing the fact that I didn't get a chance to speak. She didn't seem to care if I was annoyed or surprised. She just started talking about how she thinks making decisions for someone proves that you're strong enough to lead. The food hadn't even arrived yet, and she was already explaining her whole philosophy on relationships. She said that if someone wants everything to be equal, then they don't understand what real connection is. She said people need someone to take control, or else everything becomes messy and pointless. She talked about it like it was some kind of rule everyone should just accept. I sat there nodding, but inside I was just thinking about how weird it was that she said all of that with no hesitation. She didn't ask anything about me. She only talked about how she believes that one person in a relationship should be the one who decides everything, from what to eat to what to do each day. She said it like she was doing people a favor by taking control. I kept thinking about how she ordered for me without even asking if I had allergies or if I liked what you picked. It was like I wasn't even there as a person, but more like a guest in her system of control. The server brought the food, and I wasn't surprised that it wasn't something I would have chosen. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't what I wanted either. Emily watched me take the first bite like she was waiting for approval. I didn't want to make a scene, so I just ate. She smiled like she had proven a point. She said that most people pretend to want freedom, but deep down like when someone takes over because it shows direction. She said direction is more important than fairness. She used that word a lot. Direction. Like everything in life is a road, and one person has to drive the car without asking for directions from the passenger. The more she talked, the more it felt like she wasn't just sharing an opinion. It felt like she was testing if I would push back. I didn't. I just let her keep going while I ate in silence. She didn't notice, or maybe she did and liked it. The way she explained things made it clear she didn't believe in talking things through. She believed in deciding first and expecting the other person to follow. She said people who question are ungrateful and confused about what it means to be cared for. While she talked, I looked around the restaurant just to give my mind a break. There was family at another table laughing over something on a phone. A couple near the window was sharing fries and talking quietly. Everything around me felt normal except for the situation I was in. I looked back at Emily, and she was cutting her food slowly like she had all the time in the world. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't unsure. She was certain about every word. When I finished eating, she called the server back without even checking if I was done. She paid right away before I could even take out my wallet. Then she told me that paying first shows leadership and ends any confusion about roles. She didn't say it kindly. She said it like a rule. I stood there for a moment after we left the restaurant, just trying to figure out what happened. It wasn't dramatic. There was no argument or loud moment. It was just this strange, slow realization that she never saw the meetup as two people hanging out. She saw it as for setting the standard for how things should be. The sky outside looked even more dull than before. Cars passed by and people walked along the sidewalk carrying bags from the little stores nearby. None of them looked like they cared about what just happened. It made everything feel even more distant. Emily walked ahead like she knew exactly where she was going. I didn't follow. I just stood there watching her disappear into the crowd. She didn't turn around. She didn't wait. I walked the other way. There was no big ending. No final words. Just me walking down a street with fading light and the sound of traffic in the distance. The whole thing felt strangely quiet in my head, even though the street was noisy. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad either. I just felt like I had been part of someone else's plan without ever agreeing to it. I didn't dress up for this one. I just threw on whatever was clean because I didn't feel like trying too hard. The meetup spot was a parking lot outside a diner that always smelled like frying oil, no matter what time of day it was. The sky was that weird color between blue and gray where it looks like it wants to rain, but never actually does. I stood there kicking at a small crack in the pavement while waiting for Michael's car to pull in. There wasn't anything exciting about the moment. It just felt like something I had to get through. He arrived in a car that looked polished like it got washed that same morning. He parked like he wanted people to notice how smooth he could line it up with a parking space. When he got out, he didn't look around or seem unsure. He walked over with this look that told me he already made judgments before even saying hello. He scanned me the way people look at price tags before deciding if something's worth it. We went inside, and the diner was the same as always with sticky floors and the sound of plates clattering from the kitchen. The lights flickered a little like they were tired too. We sat in a booth near the back, and he checked his watch like he was timing everything. He didn't even glance at the menu before speaking. He started talking before I could get settled, going straight into this thing about how time shouldn't be wasted on people who don't bring financial advantage. He said it as if it was basic logic. I didn't even have a reply because I wasn't expecting that kind of start. He continued talking like he was giving a speech already planned out in his head. He said that every relationship should be looked at like a financial step forward and that people who get into things for feelings alone end up stuck. He compared it to buying something that drops in value the second you walk out of the store. He said love without gain was pointless. He didn't use soft words. He sounded like he was reviewing a business deal, not talking about people. He asked about my background, but not in a curious way. He wanted numbers, details, the kind of stuff people put on forms. I answered with basic information, but he dug deeper. He asked what kind of live situation I had, if I owned anything or if my family had property. He wanted to know what kind of income they had, if there were any connections that could benefit him. The way he asked made it clear he wasn't embarrassed by the questions. He believed they were necessary. He said that if you're going to spend time with someone, it should help your life move upward. If not, what's the point? He didn't say it in a joking way. He meant it like a rule he refuses to bend. The server came to take our order, and he spoke to her like she was part of a list he needed to check off. When she walked away, he went right back to his questions about financial benefits. He asked what I expected from someone, and if I thought love mattered more than stability. He watched my face carefully when I answered, like he was waiting to see if I slipped up and said something he considered weak. He wasn't interested in my personality or what I like to do. He just wanted to know what value I could provide. While he talked, I looked around at the other tables. There was an older couple sharing a plate of fries, laughing at something only they found funny. There was a group of teenagers crowded into a booth, arguing over who would pay. Everyone else looked normal, like they were there just to eat and talk. Meanwhile, I was sitting across from someone who kept comparing human connection to investment returns. He didn't notice the people around us at all. He was too focused on explaining why romance without money is a waste of life. The food came, but he barely touched it. He was too busy listing things he expects from a partner. He said they should come from a family that can open doors for him. He said he refuses to date anyone who can't give him an advantage in some way. He said people who talk about love and passion without mentioning financial progress are lying to themselves. He spoke with this confidence that made it sound like he believed he was above emotion. He said feelings are just distractions that make people settle. I ate quietly while he continued. He didn't ask if I agreed. He didn't need agreement. He just wanted to state his rules out loud. Each time I looked at him, I could see that he wasn't trying to impress me. He was evaluating. It wasn't a date to him. It was a screening. He treated the whole situation like a meeting where he was deciding if I was worth future time. There was something cold about it, like he separated himself from any chance of caring. He finally stopped talking for a moment and took a bite of his food. I could tell he didn't care about the taste. He was just doing it because it was part of the process. Outside the diner window, cars passed by slowly and headlights reflected off the wet pavement. I didn't even realize it had started raining lightly. The sound of raindrops hitting the glass mixed with the diner noise, and for a moment, everything around us felt more real than the conversation at the table. Michael finished eating quickly and signaled the server for the check. He paid without looking at the total. He said that paying for meals was a small expense compared to what he hoped to gain in the long run from someone. He said that if a person doesn't bring financial value, he cuts them off without hesitation. He talked about people like they were either assets or wasted time. There was no middle ground for him. When we left the diner, the air outside smelled like wet pavement and exhaust from passing cars. Michael stood under the awning, checking his phone like he had somewhere more important to be. He said that he would think about whether staying in contact was worth it. He didn't say it to be rude. He said it like it was just another step in his process. Then he walked away without waiting for a response. I stood there for a moment watching the rain hit the parking lot. Headlights reflected in puddles, and cars moved past like nothing important had just happened. I didn't feel angry or sad. I just felt like I had been part of something that didn't include me as a person. Just a category to be sorted. The rain kept falling, and people hurried to their cars, pulling jackets over their heads. I took a deep breath and started walking in the opposite direction from where he went. The night felt heavier than before, but at least I was moving away from it.
Hey guys, really sorry to interrupt. If you're still listening, then you're enjoying the story so far. And if you are enjoying, then please hit that like button. That's all I ask of you. Thanks so much. Now back to the stories.
I met Lauren on a day that felt too bright for anything serious. The sun was glaring off the windows of every building like it was trying to blind people for fun. I was waiting outside a bowling alley of all places, leaning against the wall, while kids ran around throwing popcorn at each other near the entrance. The smell of nachos and that fake butter they use in movie theaters hovered in the air. I wasn't expecting much. Bowling alleys always feel like time stops inside them, with that loud crash of pins echoing every few seconds and music from random decades playing way too loud over the speakers. She showed up wearing sunglasses, even though half the building's front was in shade. She walked like someone who knew people were watching. She didn't say much at first, just nodded like this whole thing was some business arrangement she had pre-approved. Inside, the bowling alley was buzzing with people yelling and cheering like it mattered who knocked down what. Neon lights flickered over the lanes, and the whole place smelled like rented shoes and that cleaning spray they use on tables. We got our lane, and she picked the ball for me before I could even say anything. She said it like a quick command, pointing at the one she thought I should use. I just went with it. I didn't feel like arguing over a bowling ball. I rolled the first shot, and it wasn't great, but I didn't care. She watched me like a judge, not smiling or reacting, just analyzing. Then she picked up her ball and knocked down nearly all the pins like she trained for it. I thought maybe she was just competitive. Some people get weirdly serious over games, but then I noticed something. Every time someone on the lane next to us bowled, she glanced over and then looked down at her phone, typing quick notes. At first, I assumed she was texting someone, but then she turned the screen slightly and I saw it clearly. It was a list. Names, numbers, little comments next to each entry. Some had stars drawn next to them. Some had lines through them like they were scratched off. She wasn't hiding it. She held her phone in a way that made it easy for me to see if I happened to look. It felt intentional, like she wanted me to know it existed without having to say anything. We kept playing, and she kept updating that list, scrolling through it after each turn. She had names in there with little symbols next to them, like she had a whole system. Some had comments like decent style or low confidence. She added my name after a few turns. I watched her type something after she looked me up and down for a second. I kept bowling, but the game didn't even matter anymore. I wasn't thinking about the pins. I was thinking about that list. She treated it like a scoreboard. Each time she typed something, she had the satisfied look like she was finishing a task. Between turns, she explained her system like it was totally normal. She said she ranks everyone she goes out with and keeps track of their score so she can compare them. She said dating without competition is boring. She said seeing people as players makes everything more exciting. She listed categories like appearance, status, confidence, how useful their connections are, how fast they respond to things, even how they walk. She said it all in a tone that sounded more amused than serious, but I could tell she meant it. She laughed about people who get offended when they find out. She said they just don't understand the fun in it. Fun. That's the word she used. Like turning people into ranked profiles was a casual hobby. We moved on to the arcade section after finishing the game. The bowling alley had this small arcade area with flashing lights and old machines that looked like they had been there since forever. Kids ran past with tickets in their hands, and the machines beeped constantly. She walked around like she owned the place, glancing at people like she was picturing their score next to their name. She played a basketball hoop game for a minute, not because she wanted to, but because she said she wanted to see how I reacted watching her compete with herself. She checked her list again and added something new under my name. I didn't even ask what it was. I just watched her tap her screen with that same focused expression. There was something unsettling about how calm she was about it. She didn't seem cruel. That made it even more strange. She acted like this was just part of life. People get ranked, compared, and filed away. No anger, no drama, just numbers and notes. We sat at a table near the snack counter after walking around for a while. The table was sticky like it hadn't been wiped properly. She scrolled through her list like she was going through a schedule. I caught a glimpse of multiple categories next to my name with numbers. She had a total score next to it like a final rating. She said most people average in the middle. She said very few ever get high scores. She said she keeps the highest ones in a separate list. She said she likes knowing who's better than who. I asked her what happens to the ones with low scores. She said she deletes them or moves them to a category she doesn't read again. She said it like she was talking about old files on a computer taking up memory. She put her phone down and said that everyone should treat dating like a game because it keeps things interesting. She said caring too much ruins the fun. She said emotions slow people down. The sound of pins crashing from the other side of the building echoed through the place while she checked her list one more time. She didn't ask what I thought. She didn't care if I understood. She just finished typing, locked her phone, and leaned back in her seat like her work was done. She didn't even look at me when she said she would update the list later based on how I said goodbye. I stood up and she stayed sitting, focused on her phone screen again. The neon lights flickered over her face while she scrolled through her rankings. I walked for the exit, passing lanes full of people cheering and laughing like they were living in a different world from the one I just stepped out of. When I pushed open the doors, the sunlight hit me again, bright and sharp like nothing inside had followed me out. I didn't look back. There was nothing to look at except another person staring at their own scoreboard. The sound of pins echoed behind me as the door shut. I met David in a place that didn't even feel like somewhere people go for a date. It was this plain cafe near an office building, the kind of place where people go to work on laptops with headphones in, not talk about getting to know each other. The inside had this cold vibe, like everything was picked for practicality, not comfort. Gray chairs, plain tables, walls with no decorations, except a chalkboard with drink prices written in slobby handwriting. There was a quiet buzzing sound coming from the ceiling fan that made the silence feel even more noticeable. I got there early and sat near the back. People around me weren't talking. They were just typing or staring at screens. It didn't feel like a place to relax. David walked in exactly on time, not a minute early or late, and the way he scanned the room made it feel like he was looking for something wrong before anything even started. He sat across from me, And before even greeting me properly, he took out a notebook and placed it on the table like this was a scheduled meeting. He didn't ask about my day or anything normal like that. He grabbed a pen, flipped to a blank page, and said he likes to be direct. He said he views relationships like contracts and wants to make sure conditions are clear before anything happens. He didn't even blink when he said it. He wrote the date at the top of the page like this was an official file. He asked me to tell him about myself, but not in a personal way. He wanted things in categories: strengths, weaknesses, what I could offer emotionally, what I expected in return. He didn't talk like someone trying to connect. He talked like a hiring manager. He wrote everything I said in short bullet points. When I tried to make a joke to lighten the mood, he didn't laugh. He just wrote, "Doesn't stay serious consistently," under my name like it was a warning note. I watched people around us sipping coffee, scrolling on their phones, and I felt like I was the only one trapped inside some kind of interview simulation. When the server came to ask what we wanted, he ordered without looking at the menu. He said he always orders the same thing because consistency saves time. I ordered something just to avoid sitting there empty-handed. As soon as the server left, he continued. He said that emotional support has value, but only if it's balanced. He said giving affection without getting something equal back is like wasting currency. He used that word, currency. He said love is just a trade, and people who give more than they get are bad at maintaining long-term structure. He asked how much emotional energy I'm willing to give weekly. He asked if I would expect constant check-ins or if I could handle distance. He asked what I would do in a conflict and how quickly I could recover from feeling upset. He timed how long I took to answer each question, glancing at his watch before writing it down. He didn't just listen. He measured everything like a calculation. The smell of coffee and pastries filled the air, but it didn't make a place warmer. It still felt like some waiting room where time moves slow. David tapped his pen on the table after writing each line. He said people romanticize relationships too much and ignore the reality that everything people do together is a transaction. If one person invests more and the other doesn't match it, he said it leads to emotional bankruptcy. He said he refuses to go bankrupt again. He didn't say that part with sadness. He said it like someone talking about losing money, not about losing someone. He asked if I have any emotional history that would interfere with my ability to perform in a stable partnership. He kept using words like perform and maintain. He asked how I handle stress, how I respond to disappointment, and if I have backup support systems in case he can't meet my emotional needs at certain times. I glanced at the chalkboard menu again just to give my eyes something else to focus on. Someone nearby spilled a drink, and the sound of the cup hitting the floor echoed for a moment. A worker rushed over with paper towels, and everyone went back to their screens like nothing happened. David didn't even look up. He was too busy writing another line about partnership expectations. He circled something twice and underlined it. I didn't know what it was. When the drinks came, he thanked the server without looking away from his notes. He didn't take a sip right away. He wrote something first. Then he finally leaned back and said he believes affection is a resource that should only be given when it's earned. He said random acts of care make people entitled. He asked how often I expect reassurance and if I feel the need to be told things like I matter or I'm doing okay. He said that kind of stuff should be limited because too much lowers value. He didn't look angry or harsh when he said this. That made it even more unsettling. He was calm, steady, and absolutely sure about every word. He wasn't saying all this to provoke me. He just believed it. He said he isn't interested in messy emotions or unspoken needs. He wants everything written, defined, and agreed on. He even mentioned the idea of drafting an actual document if things progressed. A contract where both sides list what they give and what they expect. I watched steam rise slowly from my drink while he explained how affection releases energy, and energy has a cost. He said if one person invests more, it creates imbalance and resentment. He said most relationships collapse because they don't treat affection like a limited supply. He said he doesn't give hugs or comfort unless it has a purpose like encouragement before a stressful event or recognition after a goal is met. After writing another few notes, he closed the notebook gently and looked at me for the first time without analyzing. He said he would review the information later and decide if continuing made sense. He said that if emotional exchange seems uneven, he will end it before any attachment forms because attachment without structure is pointless. He stood up and placed his pen back in his pocket like he just finished a meeting. He picked up his drink and took a slow sip before walking toward the door. He didn't say goodbye. He just nodded once like a closing statement and left. The door clicked shut behind him, and the sound echoed for a second longer than it should. I sat there looking at the empty seat across from me. The notebook imprint was still on the table from where he pressed down while writing. People around me kept typing and scrolling. Nothing felt out of place to them. I finished my drink in silence and listened to the quiet buzzing of the ceiling fan again. It sounded like it had been there forever, spinning and spinning, not really doing much but still running like it had a job to do. The mall food court wasn't exactly where I pictured meeting someone for the first time, but that's where Olivia picked. It was crowded, loud, and smelled like a mix of fries, pretzels, and that artificial cinnamon scent they pump out near snack stands to get people to buy stuff. I got there a little early and sat at one of those wobbly tables with metal chairs that scrape the floor every time someone moves. Kids ran around with soda cups while their parents tried to keep up. Arcade machines from across the hall made random sounds every few seconds, mixing in with the noise of trays being dropped on tables. Olivia showed up wearing a jacket that looked too clean for a place like this. She didn't look around in confusion or search for me awkwardly. She spotted me right away like she already memorized my face in advance. She sat down across from me with a calm expression that didn't match the chaos around us. Before even saying much, she placed her phone on the table face down, but close enough to reach instantly. That detail stuck out. Most people throw their phone in their pocket or bag when they want to focus. She positioned hers like it was part of the conversation. We grabbed food from one of the stalls. I ordered something quick, and she picked a salad with no dressing like she had a rule book for everything she eats. When we sat back down, she didn't start with small talk. She scanned the crowd behind me like she was checking for something. Then she looked at my phone sitting next to my tray and asked why I left it unlocked. I hadn't even noticed it was. She said leaving your phone unlocked shows how much you trust people you don't know yet. She said that kind of trust is risky but interesting. I took a bite of my food and tried to brush it off, but she kept looking at my phone like it bothered her. Then she casually said that she always checks the phones of people she was out with, usually within the first hour. She said it like someone admitting they steal fries from friends' plates, not like something serious. She explained that honesty isn't real unless you remove privacy. She said people lie too easily when they have personal space, so she likes to remove that space as soon as possible. She talked about it with a straight face, no joking, no nervous smile. She said that when someone looks away or goes to the bathroom, that's the perfect time to scroll through their messages, check social media tabs, search history, even recent photo albums. She said seeing what people do when they aren't being watched tells you everything you need to know. She didn't sound ashamed. She sounded proud, like she cracked some code. Every time someone walked past behind me, I could see her eyes flick to their phones in their hands. She watched strangers like she was trying to read their screens from a distance. She said people are too obsessed with privacy, and that privacy is just a shield people hide behind when they want to deceive others. She said that full transparency should be required at the start, not later when it's too late. I looked down at my phone again, suddenly aware of how exposed it was. I picked it up and put it in my pocket, and she watched my hand the whole time. She said that putting it away doesn't matter because access is always possible with the right timing. I asked what she meant, but she didn't answer directly. She just took a slow sip of her drink and looked at the crowd again like she was scanning targets. Her tone stayed calm the entire time. She wasn't loud or intense. That made everything she said feel even more chilling. She described how she once read through someone's entire chat history while they were ordering food. She said she found conversations with other people they were talking to at the same time, and she confronted them before the date even ended. She said catching someone before they lie builds power. She reached for her phone and flipped it over. The screen lit up with a list of names. She had a notes app open with categories like loyalty check, message pattern, social interest tracking. Under one of the names was a line that said cleared for second meeting. She scrolled casually, not hiding any of it like she wanted me to see. I didn't know if my name was on that list yet, and I didn't want to ask. The noise of the food court got louder as more people came through. A group of teens sat at the table next to ours, laughing while passing one phone around to show each other something on the screen. Olivia watched that phone more than she listened to me. She said that sharing a screen like that is weak because you don't know what's being hidden outside that one moment. She said she prefers to go straight into someone's notifications instead of waiting for them to show something willingly. When she finally looked back at me, she asked if I had anything on my phone I wouldn't want someone to see. I said everyone has something like that. She nodded like she expected that answer and said that's exactly why she checks. She said trust shouldn't be based on words but on unrestricted access. She said love should mean handing over your phone with no hesitation and letting someone scroll without warning. The way she said it wasn't emotional. It was structured. She believed privacy created distance and distance created lies. She said she once dated someone who got angry about her looking through their messages, and she ended it right there because that reaction proved they were hiding something. She said people who don't let you look are always protecting something they don't want you to know. Our food sat mostly untouched while she explained all this like she was teaching a method. Families around us ate and laughed like they lived in a completely different world. A little kid dropped his fries all over the floor and started crying while his mom tried to calm him down. Olivia didn't even look. She was too busy checking the time on her phone and marking something down in her notes app. She said she planned on checking my phone before the end of the meetup. She didn't say it as a threat. She said it like it was simply part of the process. She said if she didn't find anything, that would move me higher on her trust scale. If she did, then she would know early instead of wasting time. She said early exposure is better than slow disappointment. The food court noise blurred into one constant sound, and everyone looked the same from where I sat, faces lit up by screens, scrolling, tapping, locked into their own worlds. Olivia stood up and said she was going to throw away her tray. She picked it up slowly, giving me just enough time to realize what she was doing. She turned and walked to the trash bin, leaving her phone on the table unlocked and open as if it meant nothing. It didn't matter, though. Her eyes were on me even when her back was turned. I could feel it. I didn't touch her phone. I just watched her walk through the crowd and back. She sat down again and glanced at my pocket where my phone was. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. The meetup with Max started in one of those parks that looked peaceful on the outside, but always had this hidden tension, like something could go wrong and nobody would notice right away. It was late afternoon, the kind of time when the sunlight hits sideways and makes everything look warmer than it really is. People were walking their dogs, kids were kicking a ball around in the grass, and a couple sat on a bench sharing snacks like they were in their own world. I stood near a fountain that made this constant soft noise like static in the background. Max walked up with steady steps like he already owned the moment. He didn't look around or slow down. He headed straight toward me with this serious look like whatever was about to happen mattered more than just a normal meetup. When he reached me, he didn't waste time with small talk or casual greetings. He said hi, but it felt more like a checkpoint than a hello. He didn't smile and didn't seem nervous. He had that kind of presence that makes it clear he expects everything to go his way from the start. We walked along the path that curved through the park. Leaves crunched under our shoes, and birds made random noises from somewhere in the trees. He started talking almost immediately, not about random life stuff, but about loyalty. He spoke like someone who had practiced what he wanted to say before even meeting me. He said that when two people agree to go on a date, that moment should mean complete focus on each other. He said that from the second a person shows interest, all other options should be gone like they never existed. He said it with this calm certainty that made it sound like a rule, not an opinion. He said loyalty isn't something that builds slowly, but something that should snap into place instantly. He said once someone says yes to meeting him, he expects them to cut ties with anyone else they might be talking to. He said that continuing to talk to others after agreeing to meet him is betrayal. Not something small. Betrayal. There was no anger in his voice. That made it even more intense. He didn't talk like he was warning me. He talked like he was stating a fact. He said people treat relationships casually because they assume they have time to figure out their feelings, but he doesn't believe in testing the waters. He said commitment should happen at the very beginning, not after feelings grow. He said waiting for feelings is just an excuse to keep options open. We passed a family having a picnic on the grass. They were laughing loudly about something that didn't matter. The sound of their happiness didn't fit with the weight of his words. He kept going, explaining how he deletes numbers and blocks people the moment he sets up a date. He said it's a sign of respect and that he expects the same in return. He said if someone keeps talking to others after planning to see him, they've already failed. He said trust only works when both people remove every distraction. A dog ran past us, chasing a stick, and its owner apologized while jogging by. Max didn't acknowledge it. He stayed focused like everything outside his words didn't exist. He said that loyalty is measured by what you cut off, not by what you promise. He said promises don't matter if you still keep other people in the background for security. He said those backup options are just exit doors people keep open when they don't have real intentions. We sat on a bench near the pond. Ducks floated across the surface while the water shifted with small ripples. He leaned back and looked ahead, hands resting on his knees like someone evaluating the moment. He said he doesn't play games with attention. He said once someone sits across from him, they are either fully in or completely out. There's no middle. He said talking to others, even casually, after committing to a meetup should be treated the same as lying. I could feel the air around us getting colder even though the sun was still shining. People kept walking by, some holding hands, some with headphones in, lost in their own playlists. The world looked normal, but his words made it feel like something else entirely. He said if he ever found out someone was messaging another person after saying yes to him, he would walk away without a conversation because in his mind it's already over. He said being loyal from the start proves seriousness. He said waiting to be official before acting loyal is just hesitation disguised as freedom. He said loyalty isn't about titles, but about mindset. He said mindset is visible in what people choose to give up. He said if someone doesn't delete others from their phone right away, it shows they don't see him as their only path, and that makes the connection pointless to him. The park around us was full of movement, kids running, people tossing frisbees, a group laying down blankets under a tree. All of it felt distant while he explained how he expects full loyalty not later, but immediately. He said words like loyalty and promise with the same calm tone, like he wasn't asking but stating a requirement. He didn't sound jealous or insecure. He sounded certain, like he had locked his values in place a long time ago. He stood up and started walking again, expecting me to follow without saying anything. I did. We walked past the playground where swings squeaked with each push. He said loyalty makes things simple because once it's set, there's no guessing. He said confusion only happens when people leave room for doubt. He said doubt is created by choices, and choices should disappear once two people agree to meet. He said cutting off others isn't dramatic, it's respectful. We stopped near the exit of the park where the sidewalk met the street. Cars passed slowly, their tires making soft sounds against the asphalt. He looked at me then, not smiling, not frowning, just watching closely like he was waiting for something. He didn't ask for a reaction. He just let the silence hang in the air. The traffic lights changed from green to yellow to red, and the wind blew through the trees behind us. He finally said one more thing. He said once someone agrees to walk next to him, even for a moment, he expects them to walk only with him. No backups, no distractions, nothing waiting in the background, just a single path. Then he nodded once, like the conversation was complete. There was no dramatic ending, no handshake or forced goodbye. He just turned toward the direction he came from and walked away like the moment had served its purpose. I stood there near the park entrance, the sound of cars and distant laughter mixing together like the world didn't pause for any of it. The night I met Megan felt more like a setup for some kind of dare than an actual date. It was one of those late evenings where the streetlights cast long yellow patches on the pavement, and everything had this slightly unreal glow. The spot she chose wasn't a cafe or a park or anything normal like that. She picked this old skate park near the edge of town where the concrete ramps were covered in faded spray paint and half the lights flickered like they were about to go out. Kids were still there messing around with boards, laughing and yelling across the park like it was their territory. I showed up and leaned against the fence, hands in my pockets, just watching the scene. Someone had a speaker playing music loud enough to rattle the bench near me. Megan arrived not with a quiet walk, but with this energy that made the whole place feel different. She didn't wait for me to wave or call out. She spotted me instantly and walked over like she was stepping into a challenge. She didn't try to make a soft impression. There was something sharp about her presence. She climbed onto the edge of one of the ramps and sat like it was her spot. She didn't ease into conversation. She asked nothing gentle like how my day was. Instead, she immediately said that she doesn't believe in slow introductions. She said she likes to push people right away because how someone breaks is more interesting than how someone tries to impress. She looked at me like she was waiting for signs of discomfort. I could feel her watching for any shift in my expression. Kids skated past us. It was clacking against the concrete, but her focus never drifted. She said she tests people on purpose. She said a first meeting is the best time to hit someone emotionally because they're still trying to look calm. She said vulnerability tells her everything she needs to know. She said if someone cracks or gets quiet or shows even a hint of emotional softness, she loses interest completely. She said strength shows in the first hit, not after months of getting to know someone. I sat beside her on the ramp edge, the concrete cold through my jeans. The sky above was a dark blue fading into black, with streetlights buzzing against the dusk. Megan leaned back on her hands and started talking about how she once read someone instantly just by saying a few harsh truths. She said she doesn't like people who flinch. She wants people who don't even blink when she throws something heavy at them. She said emotions are tools for pressure, and she likes to apply pressure early. She didn't ask me questions in a normal way. She threw statements at me like she was trying to trigger something. She said people pretend to be strong but fold the second someone pokes at old wounds. She said weakness is obvious if you know where to look. While she spoke, her eyes didn't soften once. Even when she laughed, it wasn't a relaxed laugh. It sounded sharp, almost like she wanted it to echo across the park. A group nearby cheered as someone landed a trick on the ramps. Megan didn't look. She was more focused on seeing how I reacted to her words. She brought up random personal topics fast, like she wanted to corner me emotionally. She asked about things people don't usually bring up this early, not because she cared, but because she wanted to press on them. She said normal conversations for her. She prefers to see who someone really is when they're under pressure. She explained that she doesn't wait for signs of character. She forces them out. She said she believes that kindness on a first date is pointless because anyone can be kind when they're trying. She said real character shows when someone feels attacked. She didn't use a harsh tone. She said it almost casually like she was describing a sport. She kept hinting that she was waiting to see if I would snap or stay composed. The music from the speaker shifted to something louder, bass vibrating through the metal fence behind us. Megan watched a kid fall off a board and hit the ground hard. The kid got up without reacting, brushing off his clothes like nothing happened. She nodded at that, like she approved. She said that's how she thinks people should deal with emotional hits too. Get knocked down, stand back up, and act like nothing touched you. She asked about worse memories, but she phrased it in a way that made it sound like a command more than a question. When I didn't give her the reaction she was clearly waiting for, she tilted her head slightly like she was recalculating. She said most people start defending themselves at that point, trying to protect their image. She said that's when she usually checks out. She said she hates self-protection in others. She believes strength is when someone lets harsh words land and doesn't flinch. Under one of the flickering lights, her face looked different every time the light buzzed on and off. She said that if someone shows even a crack in their calmness around her, she loses respect forever. She said she doesn't believe in comforting people in pain. She believes in seeing if they can swallow it without asking for help. She said she has no interest in carrying someone emotionally. She wants someone who can take emotional hits from her and still sit still. People at the skate park started packing up as the air got colder. The sounds grew fewer. Boards stopped hitting concrete, and the music turned down. Megan stood up and walked across the ramp casually, kicking a stray water bottle aside. She called over her shoulder that most people leave first meetups with her either shaken or trying too hard to look strong. She said very few just stay steady without trying to prove anything. She said she doesn't care how someone feels. She only watches how they react when she pushes. She stopped at the other side of the park and waited for me to follow. I did, stepping over pieces of gravel and dropped soda cans. She stood near a broken bench and looked out at the empty lot next to the fence. She said she might talk again if she doesn't see weakness later. She said she keeps contact only with people who don't ask her to be gentle. She said she hates when people expect warmth. She said if someone wants warmth, they should leave early because she won't change. Then she turned and started walking out of the park. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't even look back. The streetlights buzzed overhead, and the last of the skaters rolled out through the gate. I stood there watching her walk away, her steps steady like she didn't need anyone following behind. The first time I met Thomas, it wasn't even somewhere casual like a cafe or a park. He picked this weird outdoor seating area behind a comic shop that barely anyone goes to. It was one of those spots with metal tables that are always slightly cold and plastic chairs that creak every time someone sits down. The ground had chalk drawings all over it like kids had been using the space earlier, and wrappers from snacks were pushed into the corners near the fence. You could hear cars from the street on the other side, mixed with the sound of someone stacking boxes in the comic shop loading area. I got there and sat down at one of the tables. The air smelled like dust and old paper, probably from the stacks of comics inside. A couple of people walked past without even noticing the seating area. Thomas showed up with this strange energy, like he wasn't coming to hang out but to observe something. He looked around like he was mapping the space in his head before sitting across from me. He didn't say anything for a moment. He just sat there with a curious expression, the kind people get when they're watching something they already decided is temporary. He started off polite enough, but it didn't last long. He shifted quickly, like flipping a switch. He said that he specifically chooses people who disagree with him on serious things because it gives him something to break down. He didn't ask if I agreed with him about anything. He didn't care. He actually hoped I didn't. He said that when someone disagrees, it gives him a reason to prove them wrong, and that proving people wrong gives him something to do. He said a relationship without conflict is boring to him. While he talked, he tapped his fingers on the table like he was counting seconds. He said that he once picked someone just because they had opposite views on almost everything, and he spent the whole time poking at their beliefs until he got frustrated. He said frustration is the most honest reaction someone can have. He said people show their true selves when they're trying not to lose an argument. He didn't say it with excitement or anger. He said it calmly, like someone explaining a hobby. At one point, someone inside the comic shop dropped something heavy, and the sound echoed out through the alley. Thomas looked toward the noise, but then turned back with a slight smirk, like even that sound was just another piece of his environment. He said he records conversations sometimes, especially when people start defending themselves passionately. He said he finds it entertaining to replay those moments later and show them to friends. He didn't even lower his voice when admitting that. He said that watching people get worked up over opinions is like watching a show, and he likes to be the one directing it. He asked me what I believed about a random topic out of nowhere, not because he cared about the answer, but because he wanted something to pick at. The way he leaned forward slightly made it obvious he was hoping I'd disagree. His eyes had this eager look like he was waiting to start. When I said something neutral, he looked a little disappointed. He said neutral people are harder to use because it takes longer to get a reaction from them. He said he prefers people who stand firm because they always crack more dramatically. The alley was quiet except for the occasional car horn from the street. Shadows from the fence made patterns across the concrete. Thomas started telling me about how he once edited clips of the conversation to make someone look ridiculous and then sent it to people like a highlight reel. He said it was funny to watch how the person didn't even know they were being turned into entertainment. He said most people don't realize how easily they become content for others. He didn't hide the fact that he saw me the same way. He said meeting new people gives him fresh material. He said he's not interested in soft interactions or gentle talks about life. He said he only sticks around if there's a challenge worth pushing. He looked at me like he was already deciding which parts of what I said would make the best clips. Every time I spoke, he watched my face carefully like he was waiting for cracks to show. The air around us felt still, like even the breeze didn't want to interrupt him. He talked about how people waste time trying to find harmony. He said harmony is useless because it doesn't reveal anything. He said tension is what shows the real version of someone. He said he chases that moment when someone feels the need to defend themselves because that's when they stop performing. He said most people perform through entire relationships and never show what they really are. A kid from the shop stepped outside to take out trash, dragging a bag across the concrete. Thomas paused mid-sentence, watched the kid for a moment like he was thinking something, then continued talking exactly where he left off. He never lost his train of thought. It was like everything around him was background noise that didn't matter unless he chose to use it. He asked another question, this time more direct, trying again to pull out some intense reaction. I gave a calm answer, and he let out a slow exhale, almost a sigh. He said calm people are the hardest to work with, but sometimes the most satisfying if they eventually break. He said sometimes he keeps people like that around longer just to see if they finally snap. He said watching someone hold everything in is its own kind of interesting. The sounds from inside the comic shop turned into low chatter, and someone turned on a light that cast a pale glow into the alley. Thomas leaned back, crossed his arms, and said that if nothing else, he'd at least see if I reacted later. He said reactions don't always show immediately. Sometimes they build slowly, and he finds that process even better. He said he doesn't need people to like him. He just needs them to react. He stood up without warning and said that was enough for the first meeting. He didn't ask if I wanted to walk or keep talking. He already decided it was over for the moment. He said he'd think about whether I was worth turning into something interesting. Then he headed out of the alley, stepping over chalk lines on the ground without looking at them. After he left, the air felt strange. Not heavy, not light, just strange. The traffic sounds came back into focus, and the noise of the comic shop door closing echoed against the walls. I sat there for a second longer, staring at the metal table with scratch marks all over it. The place Hannah chose wasn't lively or noisy like the others. It was this quiet family-style restaurant on the edge of the neighborhood, the kind where the lights are dim but not in a cozy way, more like they just never bothered to update anything. The walls had old photos of people I didn't recognize, probably random locals from years ago. There was a faint smell of mashed potatoes and something overcooked lingering in the air. Tables were spaced out like they wanted people to talk privately without being overheard. The silence made every word sound louder. I got there first and sat at a booth near the back. The vital seat was cracked in a few places, and someone had scratched initials into the edge of the table. A few other people were eating quietly. Nobody looked up when I walked in, like everyone was too absorbed in their own small routines. The kind of place where time feels slower. Hannah arrived with this composed, almost strict look, like she had already made decisions before sitting down. She didn't look around or take a second to settle in. She sat across from me and folded her hands on the table. Her posture was straight, not relaxed. She spoke with this quiet, controlled tone that made everything sound like a rule being delivered rather than a conversation being started. She said she believes honesty in relationships can't be trusted unless there are consequences attached. She didn't ease into it. She just said it plainly, like she was stating a fact that shouldn't be questioned. She said most people lie not because they're evil, but because they know secrets stay hidden in private spaces. She said privacy invites mistakes. She said mistakes need light, not comfort. When the server came and handed us menus, Hannah didn't even glance at hers. She kept talking while the menu sat untouched in front of her. She said that when two people commit to being together, they shouldn't just be responsible to each other. They should be responsible to someone higher, like family. She said when someone knows their actions might be reported to their family, they think twice before doing something wrong. She wasn't joking. She said every relationship she's been in, she made it clear from the beginning that if the other person slipped up or said something questionable, she would tell her family and theirs. She said shame is a strong motivator and that love without accountability is weak. She said secrets are the start of betrayal, and family oversight prevents secrets from growing. The server asked if we were ready to order. Hannah ordered something simple without looking away from me. I chose something just to get it out of the way. After the server left, she continued like she had never been interrupted. She said people fear being exposed, and fear is important. She said fear keeps people disciplined. That word, disciplined, stuck for a moment. The way she said it sounded more like rules for a classroom than a relationship. She said she believes both partners should inform each other's families about mistakes as soon as they happen. She said that if someone lies, even about something small, it should be brought to light immediately. She said hiding mistakes is the same as planning betrayal. She said the idea of keeping things between us is just another phrase for protecting wrongdoing. I looked around the restaurant for a moment. A couple near the window was eating slowly, barely speaking. Their food sat half-finished while they stared at their plates. A waiter refilled their drinks without a word. The whole place felt like silence had sunk into the walls. Hannah didn't seem bothered by the atmosphere. She liked it, I think. She spoke clearly, calmly, every word deliberate. She said she once called someone's parents in front of them after they made a sarcastic comment she didn't like. She said the reaction was strong but necessary. She said if someone feels safe enough to joke in a disrespectful way, that means fear isn't present. She said she doesn't want love without fear, because fear proves someone values what they might lose. She lifted her glass and took a small drink, steady and unhurried. She said her ideal relationship is one where every action could be reported to family members at any time, so both people act with constant awareness. She said awareness keeps relationships clean. She said affection means nothing without that layer of oversight pressing down on both people equally. The food arrived, plates clattering softly on the table. Hannah thanked the server politely and continued as if she had been waiting for the food just to pause for a moment. She cut her food into small, even pieces before eating. Everything she did was controlled. No wasted movement. She said if someone truly loves another, they won't fear this kind of structure because love shouldn't need privacy. She said privacy is where betrayal breeds. The restaurant remained quiet around us, forks scraping against plates in the background. She said she would rather end something immediately than let someone think mistakes can stay hidden. She said exposure is mercy because it stops things from rotting in the dark. She said some people call her harsh, but she calls it safe. She didn't look angry or emotional while saying any of this. Her face stayed calm, almost blank. She wasn't trying to shock me. She believed every word like it was the simplest logic. She said that if she were with someone, she would expect them to report her mistakes too. She said mutual fear keeps everything balanced. Near the front counter, someone laughed quietly at something on their phone, and Hannah glanced over with a faint look of disapproval before turning back to me. She said laughter without control can make people forget consequences. She said comfort is dangerous because it makes people feel safe enough to hide things. She finished her food slowly, wiping her mouth with a napkin in a precise motion. When she was done, she set her utensils down neatly and folded her hands again. She said relationships should feel like being observed at all times. She said observation prevents collapse. Then she stood up calmly and said that was enough talking for now. She didn't ask if I understood or if I agreed. She just delivered her rules like a set of terms and then stepped away from the table. She walked toward the exit with steady steps, never looking back. The door opened and closed with a soft click, and the restaurant went back to its quiet rhythm. I met Brandon at a boardwalk near the beach just before sunset. The sky was fading into that mix of orange and pink that makes everything look softer than it really is. People were walking in slow groups, carrying snacks and drinks, some stopping to take pictures near the railing. The sound of waves crashing below blended with the distant music coming from stalls selling cotton candy and corn dogs. I leaned against the rail, watching the water hit the rocks. The air smelled like salt and fried food at the same time. Brandon arrived with a steady pace, hands in his pockets like he wasn't in a rush. He didn't wave or call out. He just walked up beside me and leaned on the railing too, eyes focused on the water. For a moment, it almost felt normal, like two people just taking in the view. Then he spoke, and the tone of his voice changed the whole atmosphere in an instant. He said memories ruin fresh starts. He didn't say it dramatically. He just laid it out like a basic rule. He said when two people decide to be together, everything from before should be erased. Not moved aside, erased. He said that letting old photos, old messages, or anything tied to past attachments stay around poisons new connections. He said partners should purge their history before moving forward or else loyalty is just pretend. He talked while staring straight ahead, watching the waves like he was explaining weather patterns instead of relationships. He said he expects his future partner to delete every picture that includes someone they once cared about, even group photos if that person is in the frame. He said even old gifts should be thrown away or burned. He said reminders of other people are like cracks in a wall. Doesn't matter how small they are. Eventually they spread. A couple walked by holding hands, laughing about something. Brandon didn't look at them. He said people like to act like the past doesn't matter as long as it's over, but he doesn't believe the past ever stays dead unless you kill it manually. He said keeping old photos is like leaving a window open in a storm. Sooner or later, something gets through. The air grew colder as the sun kept dropping. Lights along the boardwalk flickered on one by one, casting reflections on the water. He said he doesn't want to hear stories about exes, doesn't want to see pictures from old memories, doesn't want to know about past traditions people had with someone else. He said new relationships shouldn't live in the shadow of old ones. He said comparing even by accident is disrespect. He turned slightly enough to look at me and said he would walk away instantly if he found even one old picture still stored in someone's phone. He said trust isn't built by promises, but by deleting proof of past connections. He said emotional loyalty starts with cleansing. That was the word he used. Cleansing. As if he was talking about removing toxins. Around us, people were lining up at a food stall, laughing and talking loud. But everything he said felt too sharp to blend into the casual energy of the boardwalk. He said memories shouldn't be kept out of sentiment. He said if someone needs to hold on to reminders of others, then they're not ready to start over. He said when he commits to someone, he clears everything. Pictures, contacts, even places that hold old meaning. He said he expects the same in return with no hesitation. A kite flew overhead, the string pulled tight by someone running along the sand below. Kids screamed as waves chased their feet. Brandon watched none of it. His voice stayed level, controlled. He said love shouldn't share space with what came before. He said even mentioning someone from the past makes the new connection smaller. He said if someone truly values a new bond, they won't hesitate to delete everything tied to anyone else. He said hesitation reveals truth more than words. A sudden breeze moved across the boardwalk, lifting bags and blowing napkins off tables. Brandon brushed his hair back with one hand and continued, saying that people romanticize history, but history is just clutter when you're trying to build something new. He said he once ended things with someone just because they kept a shoebox of old photos hidden in their closet. He said that kind of storage proves that a piece of the heart still lives elsewhere. He said he doesn't care if people think he's intense. He said intensity keeps things clean. He said he wants a connection that starts from zero, not one that grows on top of leftover attachments. He said starting from zero means burning anything that came before, not just physically but emotionally too. The sky darkened fully, and the boardwalk lights glowed against the deep blue above. People started heading toward the parking lot. The sound of waves grew louder as the crowd thinned. Brandon finally looked at me again, eyes steady. He said if he ever sees a partner scrolling too far back in their gallery, he'll assume they're still attached to something. He said he doesn't argue or explain. He just leaves. He pushed away from the railing and stood up straight. The wind caught his jacket slightly. He said fresh starts are only real when nothing from before survives. Then, without asking if I agreed or checking my reaction, he turned and started walking down the boardwalk. His steps were calm, almost slow, like he wasn't leaving in anger, but simply moving on to wherever he planned next. The sound of the ocean stayed behind him like a backdrop, steady and endless. I watched him disappear into the flow of people heading back toward the main street. The night I met Kiki, the weather felt heavy like the air hadn't moved all day. We met at a downtown outdoor seating area next to a row of food trucks. Neon signs buzz over our heads, casting weird colors onto the pavement. People were sitting on folding chairs with paper plates balanced on their laps, talking and scrolling on their phones between bites of food. You could hear laughter mixed in with a low rumble of generators powering the food trucks. It smelled like grilled meat, fries, and smoke from something cooking too long. I got there a little early and sat at one of the metal tables near the back where it was slightly quieter. The chair rocked slightly every time I shifted my weight. I pulled out my phone to kill time, scrolling through messages. That's when Kiki appeared, moving through the crowd with a focused pace like she wasn't here to wander around. She noticed me instantly and headed over, sitting down without pausing to look around. She placed her food on the table but didn't touch it yet. Her phone was out before she even spoke. She didn't start with casual questions or anything light. She opened by saying that trust is outdated. Not in an annoyed way, but like she was stating something obvious. She said people keep saying relationships need trust, but she thinks trust is lazy. She said it's better to track someone and know instead of trusting and guessing. She spoke calmly while tapping something on her screen. The glow of her phone reflected in her eyes. She said that when she meets someone, the first thing she does is search every account they have. Not just social media, but any trace she can find. She said she checks who they follow, who likes their posts, what patterns they have in their online activity. She said behavior leaves digital footprints, and that watching those footprints tells you more than conversation ever could. She finally took a bite of food, but even while eating, she kept her phone in her hand. She said most people think scrolling someone's profile is enough, but she takes it further. She tracks when someone is online, what time they stop replying, and how their posting pattern changes depending on who they talk to. She said people reveal intentions and timing. She said a sudden late-night online moment after a quiet day usually means they're messaging someone specific. The crowd around us kept moving. People laughed loudly near the taco truck. Someone dropped a drink and cursed under their breath while wiping it up with napkins. Kiki didn't glance up. She tapped her phone, then casually said she keeps a file for everyone she talks to for more than a few days. A real file. Notes sorted by date with lists of online activity, comment history, and any shifts in tone. She said she updates it automatically. She made it sound like a normal part of getting to know someone. I watched her phone screen. She had an app open with names and short lines next to them. Notes, observations. She flicked through them casually like going through a grocery list. She said she looks for patterns. If someone interacts with the same person repeatedly online, she flags it. If they pause mid-conversation and go inactive but show up liking something elsewhere, she flags it. She said small details expose loyalty. Lights flickered above us, and someone nearby started playing music from a portable speaker. The bass thumped through the pavement. Kiki kept scrolling. She said she doesn't ask people to be honest. She just watches and collects. She said trust hands too much power, but tracking gives control. She said control prevents disappointment. She looked at me briefly and said she had already started tracking me before we met. She said she read through some of my recent activity and logged who I interacted with the most. She said she noticed patterns already. She said she wasn't judging yet, but she was watching. She said she never stops watching what she starts. Someone at a nearby table burst into laughter, nearly dropping their food. Kiki stayed focused. She said people lie without thinking, not because they're evil, but because they're used to hiding small things. She said watching online patterns makes lies obvious. She said she prefers proof over promises. She said if someone tells her they're loyal, she checks. And if the numbers don't match the words, she leads without warning. The night air grew cooler as more people arrived. Food wrappers blew across the ground, catching under tables. Kiki didn't seem bothered by the noise or motion. She said she doesn't confront people when she catches them doing something. She just adds it to her file and adjusts her expectations. She said she might stay around someone even after marking them as untrustworthy, just to see how much more she can learn. She said she tracks when people delete things too. She said deletions are just as informative as posts. She said sudden cleanup means guilt. She said guilt proves more than a confession ever could. She scrolled to a section on her phone labeled past connections, and there were multiple entries with timestamps and short phrases like shifted behavior after 8 p.m. or new interaction pattern with unknown account. She said these notes keep her ahead. The generators from the food trucks hummed louder as someone adjusted equipment. Kiki took another slow bite of food, chewing without rushing. She didn't ask me anything personal. She didn't need to. She said most people reveal themselves without being asked if you just watch long enough. She said trust is just waiting to be proven wrong. She prefers to prove herself right. She finished eating and wiped her hands on a napkin. She stood up and said she would keep updating the file. She said what she saw next would decide how long she kept paying attention. She didn't say goodbye or ask for anything else. She just walked away, phone still in her hand, typing something before she even blended back into the crowd. The neon lights buzzed overhead, and the food truck line grew longer as more people arrived. I stayed there for a moment, listening to the background noise mix together, watching her disappear between moving figures, still typing. The place Jason picked wasn't busy or loud. It was this quiet corner outside a convenience store that had a couple of benches set up under a flickering streetlight. The pavement had dark stains from spilled drinks and gum stuck to random spots. Cars passed by occasionally, their headlights flashing across the ground before disappearing down the street. The store sign buzzed lightly from above, and the only other noise was the hum of a soda machine near the door. It was the kind of place people choose to hang out, but that's where he wanted to meet. I got there and sat on the bench closest to the light. The air felt still, with a faint smell of asphalt and something fried drifting from a fast food place across the road. I checked my phone a couple of times while waiting. When Jason showed up, he didn't walk slowly or look around. He approached with this casual confidence, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. He sat down beside me like he had already settled into whatever this was going to be. For a moment, he didn't say anything. He just looked ahead at the cars passing with that distant stare people get when they're thinking but don't want to show it. Then he suddenly turned slightly, looked straight at me, and said that he has a habit most people don't react well to. He didn't build up to it. He didn't test the mood. He just dropped it like an opening statement. He said that when he meets someone for the first time, he lies about having a serious illness. He said it calmly, like it was just part of his routine. He explained that he does it to check something important right away. He said he wants to see how someone reacts when they hear something heavy before they get comfortable. He said watching that moment tells him more than weeks of small talk ever could. He said if someone doesn't show the amount of concern he thinks they should, he blocks them instantly. He said that kind of reaction tells him if someone is emotionally strong or weak. He leaned back against the bench, stretching his legs out slightly like he had all the time in the world. He said he doesn't care if people call it manipulative. He said honesty at the start is pointless because people are always pretending to be nice. But if you hit them with something heavy fast, you see their real instincts. He said sympathy should need time. It should hit instantly if it's real. A car pulled into the convenience store parking lot, headlights sweeping across us before shutting off. Someone got out, walked inside, and the door beeped as it opened. Jason didn't break eye contact. He said he once told someone he had only a few months left to live just to test their reaction. He watched them closely, and when they didn't react how he wanted, he got up and left without explaining. He said he never talked to them again. He said that's how he filters people. He described it like a game with rules he made up. He said care should be immediate or it isn't real. He said people who hesitate or don't know what to say disappoint him right away. He said people who overreact annoy him too. He said he wants a perfect reaction. The way he said perfect made it clear he didn't mean dramatic. He meant precise. Controlled but clear. He wanted to see concern without pity, steady support without panic. He said he knows what that looks like when he sees it. The soda machine near us hummed and clicked, dropping the can inside. The light above flickered again, casting shifting shadows around us. Jason looked comfortable in the dim light, like he liked the unnoticed places. He said he never tells people afterward that he lied unless he decides they passed. He said most people fail fast. He said truth comes later only if they're worth keeping around. He didn't speak with guilt or pride. He was too steady for that. His tone didn't shift once. He wasn't bragging. He wasn't confessing. He was just explaining behavior that he sees as logical. He said people waste time trying to be gentle and ease into deep emotions, but he prefers to rip into it immediately. He said relationships should start with intensity, not awkward introductions. A truck rolled past on the road, the sound rumbling for a moment before fading. Jason glanced at it briefly, then continued. He said people always claim they would support someone through anything, but those words mean nothing until they're put in a stressful moment without warning. He said that's why he does it early before anyone gets comfortable. He said comfort makes people fake. He ran a hand across the back of his neck like he was thinking, then said something that stuck. He said love shouldn't have to warm up. It should either be there or not. No build-up. No slow understanding. No waiting for the right moment. He said waiting is just another word for delaying truth. The store door opened again, and two teenagers walked out laughing, holding drinks and snacks. The sound drifted across the lot for a moment, then faded again as they left. Jason watched them walk away, but didn't look bothered by the interruption. He said he plans to keep using this method until someone reacts the way he expects without hesitation. He said he won't settle until that happens. He stood up slowly, brushing off his jacket like there was something on it. He looked down at me like he was already finished talking. He said that's all he needed to say for now. He didn't wait for me to respond, didn't ask what I thought. He just nodded slightly, like closing a file, then turned and walked toward the street. The light flickered again as he passed under it, and then he disappeared into the flow of passing cars and moving shadows. The bench felt colder after he left. The soda machine clicked again, and the store lights buzzed above me like nothing important had just been said.